The house was old. It stood at the end of a long, winding road, shrouded in mystery and time. The Victorian architecture, once grand, now seemed to sag under the weight of years. The garden, once meticulously maintained, had grown wild and untamed, a jungle of memories and forgotten dreams. Inside, it was filled with things left behind by previous occupants, each item a silent witness to the passage of time. Dusty furniture, cobwebs in every corner, and the faint smell of mildew permeated the air. It was as if the house itself was a living entity, holding onto the past with a tenacious grip. John and Mary bought it cheap. They liked the garden, despite its wild state. They saw potential where others saw decay. The house, with its creaking floors and peeling wallpaper, spoke to them in a way that modern homes never could. It was a project, a labor of love, and they were ready to breathe new life into it. Boxes piled up in the attic, covered furniture gathered dust. John found it unsettling. The dim light filtering through the small attic window cast eerie shadows on the walls. Mary didn't mind. She liked old things, the history they carried, the stories they could tell. To her, the attic was a treasure trove waiting to be explored. One sunny afternoon, John decided to clear the attic. He opened a box, hoping to find something of value, or at least something interesting. The air was thick with dust, and he sneezed as he lifted the lid. Inside, he found a dusty old teddy bear. Its button eyes seemed to stare back at him, almost pleadingly. The fur, once soft and plush, was now matted and worn. It was a relic from another time, a child's cherished companion, long forgotten. He shivered. It felt wrong. There was something about the bear that unsettled him, a sense of unease that he couldn't quite place. It was as if the bear carried with it the weight of sorrow and loss. He put the bear back, almost hastily, as if trying to rid himself of the feeling. He closed the box and pushed it aside, determined to move on. He decided to start with a different box. Perhaps this one would hold something less disturbing, something that wouldn't make his skin crawl. He lifted the lid, his hands trembling slightly. The attic felt colder now. The temperature seemed to drop, and a chill ran down his spine. He could hear whispers, faint and indistinct, like the murmurs of ghosts. Or was it just his imagination playing tricks on him? Or was it just the wind? The curtains fluttered gently, moved by a breeze that seemed to come from nowhere. John shook his head, trying to dispel the growing sense of dread. He had a lot of work to do, and he couldn't afford to be spooked by shadows and whispers. The garden was bright. The sun cast a golden glow over the lush greenery, making the leaves shimmer and the flowers sparkle like jewels. It was a place of tranquility and beauty, where the worries of the world seemed to melt away. Flowers bloomed in the sun, their vibrant colours painting a picturesque scene. The air was filled with the sweet fragrance of roses, lilies and daisies, each petal a testament to nature's artistry. Bees buzzed from flower to flower, collecting nectar and adding a gentle hum to the serene atmosphere. Mary loved to read there. She would often find a cosy spot under the shade of a tree, lost in the pages of her favourite books. The garden was her sanctuary, a place where she could escape into the worlds of fantasy and adventure, where every story came to life amidst the blooms. John liked to nap under the old oak tree. The sturdy branches provided a perfect canopy, shielding him from the sun's rays. The gentle rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds created a soothing lullaby, lulling him into peaceful slumber. One day, John woke from his nap. He saw something strange. His eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the bright light, and he noticed an unusual sight that made him sit up straight, his heart pounding with curiosity and a hint of unease. A little girl sat at a table under the oak tree. It was a small, delicate table adorned with a lace tablecloth and tiny porcelain teacups. The scene was almost surreal, like a page out of a storybook. She was having a tea party. Her guests were an assortment of dolls, each seated with impeccable posture, as if they were real. The girl chatted animatedly with them, her voice a soft murmur that blended with the sounds of the garden. She wore a faded blue dress. It looked old-fashioned, like something from another era, with delicate lace trim and a ribbon tied at the waist. The dress, though worn, added to the ethereal quality of the scene. Her hair was long and dark. It cascaded down her back in soft waves, catching the light and shimmering like a waterfall of midnight. Her appearance was both enchanting and mysterious, as if she had stepped out of a dream. She looked up and smiled at John. Her smile was warm and inviting, yet there was something otherworldly about it. It was a smile that held secrets, a smile that seemed to know more than it let on. He felt a chill despite the sunshine. The warmth of the day did nothing to dispel the sudden cold that crept over him. It was as if the garden itself had shifted, becoming a place of shadows and whispers. Where did she come from? John wondered. He had never seen her before, and the garden was usually a place of familiarity. His mind raced with questions, each one more perplexing than the last. He didn't see a gate in the hedge. The garden was enclosed, with no obvious entrance or exit. It was as if the girl had appeared out of thin air, materializing in the heart of the garden without a trace. The girl giggled and poured tea into a tiny cup. It was unsettling. Her laughter was light and carefree, yet it sent a shiver down John's spine. The tea party, once a charming scene, now felt like a puzzle he couldn't solve, a mystery that lingered in the air like a forgotten dream. John approached cautiously. The girl smiled wider. "Hello," she said with a mysterious tone. "Do you want some tea?" she asked, her eyes gleaming. He looked around for her parents, feeling uneasy. "Where did you come from?" John asked, puzzled. "I live here," she said matter-of-factly. "This is my house." John frowned. He didn't believe her at all. "You should go home now," John said gently. "It's getting late," he added. The girl shook her head, refusing. "I am home," she insisted firmly. John tried again. "Where are your parents?" he asked. The girl didn't answer. She just stared at him with big, dark eyes. Her silence unnerved him. He decided to try a different approach. He would find her parents. "Come with me," John said. "We'll find your parents together." The girl shook her head again. "They're busy," she whispered. "Stay for tea," she insisted. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. John hesitated. He felt drawn to her, yet afraid at the same time. John backed away. He needed to get Mary. Something wasn't right. He hurried to the house. He found Mary in the kitchen. He told her about the girl. Mary looked concerned. She followed him back to the oak tree. The girl was gone. The table and tea set were gone too. It was as if she had never been there. Mary thought John had imagined it. He insisted he hadn't. He knew what he had seen. Something felt wrong. He could feel it in his bones. That night, John couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the girl's face, her big dark eyes, her faint sad smile. He got out of bed and went downstairs. He found a box labelled Family Photos. He opened it. He sifted through faded pictures. There, in one photo, he saw her, the girl from the garden. She stood next to a couple. John's heart pounded. He recognized the garden, the old oak tree. It was the same place where he had met the girl. John showed the picture to Mary. She gasped. "That's her," she whispered. "That's the girl from the garden." They decided to investigate. They went into town. They visited the local library. They searched old newspapers and records. They discovered a tragic story. The family in the photo had lived in their house. They died many years ago. A fire. The girl's name was Lily. She was buried in the town cemetery. John felt a chill. He knew where he had to go. John stood before Lily's grave. He felt a profound sadness. He placed the old teddy bear from the attic on her headstone. He remembered her invitation to tea. He should have stayed. He should have listened. He owed her that much. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have stayed for tea." He placed a small bunch of wildflowers on her grave. The wind rustled the leaves in the trees. John felt a cold hand touch his. He turned, but no one was there. The next day was sunny. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the sun cast a warm golden glow over everything. It was the kind of day that made you feel alive, that made you believe in the magic of the world. John went back to the garden. The garden was a special place for him, a sanctuary where he could feel close to those he loved. The flowers were in full bloom, their vibrant colours painting a picture of life and beauty. He set up the small table and chairs. Each piece of furniture was placed with care, as if he were preparing for a very important guest. The table was small but sturdy, and the chairs were just the right size for a child. He found a child's tea set in the attic. The attic was filled with memories, dusty and forgotten, but the tea set was a treasure, a link to the past. It was delicate and beautiful, with tiny cups and saucers that seemed almost too fragile to touch. He carefully laid it out. Each piece was placed with precision, as if he were creating a work of art. The cups were arranged in a perfect circle, and the teapot was placed in the center, ready to pour. He even found a small plate for imaginary cakes. The plate was decorated with tiny flowers, and he could almost see the cakes, as if they were real. It was a small touch, but it made the scene complete. He sat down and waited. The garden was quiet, except for the gentle rustling of the leaves and the distant chirping of birds. He felt a sense of peace, as if he were exactly where he was meant to be. He imagined Lily sitting opposite him. He could see her clearly, her bright eyes and her mischievous smile. She was a part of him, a part of his heart, and he knew she was there with him in spirit. He poured imaginary tea into the tiny cup. The act was simple, but it was filled with meaning. It was a way of keeping his promise, a way of showing that he had not forgotten. He talked to her about the garden. He told her about the flowers, about how they had grown and flourished. He told her about the birds and the butterflies, and how they brought life and colour to the garden. He told her how much Mary loved the flowers. Mary had always had a special connection to the garden, and her love for the flowers was a reflection of her love for life. He knew that Lily would have loved them too. He told her he wasn't afraid anymore. The garden had given him strength, had shown him that he could face his fears and overcome them. He felt a sense of courage, a sense of hope. He knew she was just a lonely little girl. She had been lost and afraid, but now she was at peace. He felt a sense of understanding, a sense of connection. He knew that he had kept his promise and that she was finally free. The sun began to set. John knew it was time to go. He packed up the tea set. He looked at the empty chair. He smiled sadly. "Goodbye, Lily," he whispered. "See you tomorrow." He walked back to the house. He felt a strange sense of peace. He knew Lily was still there somewhere, watching over the garden, and he would keep his promise. He would have tea with her again every day.